In this video, I'm going to cover how to install the Virtual Identity Server on a 64-bit version of Windows. So, download the zip file, and I've already done that, and unzip it, and you'll notice the contents of the zip file contain a PDF covering the installation guide and the executable to actually run the setup. So I'm going to go ahead and double-click the setup. Familiar interface for installing on Windows comes up. I'll accept the agreement, additional information, and see program files optimal IdM. Sounds like a good default location. You could change that. What other options? We'll look at these later. The management console and the Ldap manager. And again, the optimal IdM folder. Create icons if you want them, which I do, and a summary screen. So it's actually laying down the binaries here for the Virtual Identity Server and putting it in the C program files optimal IdM folder. And a summary screen again. And I'm going to go ahead and launch the config wizard. So you notice the two icons created there, Ldap Manager, Management Console. We'll look at those in a little bit. So the first question I'm asked in the wizard is this the first install of this VIS instance, basically a cluster of VIS server, or is it a replica? So clicking on the replica would be after you have one VIS up and running, and it very quickly and easily walks you through that. So I'm going to choose, this is my initial install. Choose that, and then you have your options, whether we would install both of the services and as well here our ADLDS instance. So this is sometimes known as our viz config or our system visa, and we use this for some optional features such as dynamic groups and auto groups. So that is optional, but recommended to go ahead and install it to be feature rich in terms of that. Let's choose run. First service was registered successfully, as well as the persistent cache. Now this step wants to know, because I chose that ADLDS, would we like to go on? I'm going to go ahead and do that. So notice the viz config, that's the default name. You could change it, typically leave it the same. Ports 50389, 5063, again, it recognizes that those are open ports. If they were not, it would suggest other ports. And recommending using the default credentials of the logged in user. So I'm going to go ahead and click yes. So what that means is it's actually using what I'm logged into Windows as, and it is recommended by us to use whatever account you want us to default set of permissions for ADLDS. You can see it's actually installing that in the background here. That you log into the console, into Windows as that user, because it will use that user for the default permissions. So you can change it later, but it is recommended whatever account that you are going to have this run under, log into Windows under that account. Okay, let's click here. We've got the wizard that actually is going to go ahead and set up VIS for the first time. So it went out there and checked to see what open ports were. I'm installing this on the domain controller, so port 389 and 636 are not available. So it recommends 8389, 8636 for those. Gave a default partition of DCVIS DCNet. We'll go ahead and choose that. Again, you can change this very easily later. Let's go ahead and for the most part we recommend just accept the defaults, and we can come in there and make any changes later. So what's the host name of my Active Directory? So you can see here we've got a couple of default ones, ADLDS and Sun1. Sun1's basically generic Ldap. I'm going to choose local host because my AD is on that domain controller. Actually, the bind account that it came up with by default, that is who I'm logged into Windows as. So if you look here, you can see I'm in as the admin account, so it does populate that. Default virtual namespace, what do you want that to be? And I'll go ahead and change that to OU equals optimal IdM, and go ahead and give it my password. We're going to validate that password. That was successful. And read context information. So it actually reads and fetches the root context DN, which is the root of the forest. And that's where we go get the schema, the aggregate schema, as well as other DIT information. The base DN is where do you want us to start. So I'm going to start at the root of the forest, but say you had a subdomain, you could easily point it to a subdomain there if you wanted as well. So click Next, validated all that information. It was all successful. So now it wants to know if we want to create that system visa. So a visa is a virtual identity server adapter. Basically, it's an adapter to some connection. We do want to do this because that would be the ADLDS that we set up. So localhost. Again, it populated 50389, 50636, which is correct. It actually took my password from my prior screen, making it nice and easy. let's just do that read context, and it did grab the GUID. So this is very much similar to the AD, except it's slightly different. It's a GUID in Atom. So perfect. Looks like we're doing pretty good. We'll do save, and we'll click done. Would I want to start VIS? Sure. Let's go ahead and start the service. So that's actually starting the service in Control Panel Services. You can also stop and start it from our Management Console, which you'll see here in a second. So it's actually starting up the service, creating a connection to the two visas. Again, a visa stands for Virtual Identity Server Adapter. Right now we have two visas, one visa to Active Directory and one visa to our system visa, or our viz config as we call it. So let's go ahead and click close. We're done. The service started. And let's launch our Ldap Manager application. So the Ldap Manager application is a feature-rich Ldap browser that we install as a part of VIS. So it is included with the license for VIS. And what that allows you to do is browse any Ldap directory, such as Active Directory, as well as VIS. Didn't double-click it there the first time. And what we'll do here is let's look at the configuration. So I'm going to click on the Configuration tab, and you'll see that it automatically created a connection to VIS, localhost. It actually used the same information I put on the installation screens and seeded it right here. So we're basically up and running. I'm just going to click the Ldap tree view, click here on Virtual Identity Server, and there you go. We actually now have, there's that OU equals optimal IDM. That is my Active Directory, and we're actually seeing that through VIS. So if we look at a distinguished name for a user, you'll see Jeff Boren, and it's OU equals optimal IDM, comma DC VIS DC net. The real physical is the OU equals optimal IDM. So we have that up and running, and we also have the viz config container, which is the system visa. So product's up and running, and look to the other videos for how to configure some advanced options within VIS. If you have any questions, please email support@optimalidm.com.